Well, here we go with chapter 12. Let's go back in time. This is a long chapter, so I'll get right to it, and I feel that it really speaks for itself. So, here we go. When my seventh child was born, there was a period of 7 years that I fast-forwarded through in the previous chapter. Let's go back in time and look at some of the events of the gathering storm. Stacy did not allow me to witness the birth of Maeve. She was so angry with me that when I asserted my right to be there, she had enough of a fit that I just backed off. Characterizing Stacy's behavior as a fit will probably lead to some picture of screaming and throwing things. This is not what a Stacy fit is all about. Stacy controls with silence and guilt. She is quite good at subtle threats. I know that all of my children have been raised with this method of control. I am a very forthright person. I don't have a nature that allows me to employ this kind of evil. The weird thing about the story of the relationship of Stacy and me is that during all of this, we slept together. We had periodic sex. In fact, I believe we had more sex than the national average. In all the years I'd known Stacy, I never could figure out her sexual patterns, turn-ons or buttons, if you will, except for her desire to get pregnant. I never could predict whether she would be hot or cold. I remember her telling me, "You don't know me at all." It was true. I also knew that no one else did either. Because of Stacy's non-confrontational presentation and her "I've got nothing to say, just ignore me" smile, people often describe Stacy as sweet. Whenever that happened, Stacy resented it and would quickly say to me privately, "I don't know why everybody thinks I'm so sweet. They don't know me. Someday I want to be rich enough to tell them all to go to hell." I should have listened and taken her quietly expressed contempt to heart. It is certainly where she told her parents to go many times, where she told some of her acquaintances, friends to go over the years, and where she eventually sent me. I didn't understand or believe that her true nature was that mean. After all, she was so sweet. After the declaration of pregnancy with Maeve, I had to continue to live with a woman who betrayed me. It's a really ugly reality. To employ a cliche, on one hand, I was sleeping with the enemy, but on the other hand, I was still with my wife and the mother of my children. Hope is often dangerous. I was also conflicted because I loved my children and appreciated Stacy's taking care of them. Though I complain about her controlling ways and her opposition to the way I wanted my children to be raised, she did a wonderfully good job in many ways. I cannot say I would have done better. Stacy is wise in many ways, and just because you disagree with someone doesn't mean that you're right. I don't know how my kids have turned out. I imagine that they have turned out to be as lackluster as their mom. I do know that they have not turned out bad. I just wonder if the suppression of their true identity hasn't watered their wine and deprived them of the discovery of their true nature. Stacy was big on suppressing feelings. I was big on letting it all hang out. I just wonder. Still, I was sleeping with the enemy throughout Stacy's pregnancy. I still tried like hell to keep a sense of secure relationship for her. I felt that security was essential for a good pregnancy. I was always far more kind with Stacy when she was with child. Being too kind too much was perhaps one of my mistakes, but give me a break. Stacy was virtually either pregnant or just home with a new baby most of the time. I remember during watching a Winter Olympics, Stacy saying This is the first Winter Olympics I've watched when I wasn't pregnant in 16 years. I remember Stacy saying to a friend, I was pregnant in 3 decades, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. Here I was, a car repairman. Stacy somehow thought after having 7 children that it was a good idea to have an 8th with a father whose financial earning capability was already stretched beyond its limit and with no intention of taking any responsibility herself. Stacy's contempt for me began to grow, as did her lack of respect. Set out to quietly and insidiously prove to the children that I did not care about them, this started subtly, but was easy because I was out of the house 12 hours a day generating income. One of the neat tricks that she employed was to demand the impossible. She told me that I had to spend more time with the kids. This was true. She told me that we needed more money. This was also true. She demanded that I do both. No matter which one I did, the other pursuit would suffer. Since I was the only breadwinner, I had to cover that responsibility without fail. I always did. But then was criticized in front of the children for failing to spend time with them. My wife had an on-again, off-again relationship with her mother, and at the time of this episode, things with them were civil. Stacy would take the kids to visit her mom and dad every Sunday and would stay for dinner. After dinner, the family would pack up and come home at exactly 10 minutes of 8. I am a lifetime Star Trek fan. After 21 years of Captain Kirk reruns, Star Trek: The Next Generation had come on TV. It averaged 20 million viewers per week, beating Cheers and Wheel of Fortune. The show received 18 Emmy Awards and set the stage for the Star Trek franchise that would be like James Bond and 60s music, a cultural phenomenon that would be the religion of my life. I was thrilled and made every effort to leave work at 6:30 on Sunday evening, to be home by 7 o'clock to see my new favorite show. I always say that I never watched TV during the 80s because I worked. That statement is true. I always vowed to someday watch MacGyver and Miami Vice. Anyway, every week at the climax of the show, my family would burst through the door with hugs and kisses and stories for their dad. I would have loved for my kids to have been home at 7 to watch the show with me, but somehow that was too much to ask. Stacy could see that interrupting the show was annoying to me, so what did she do? She would come to our street and drive around the block for 10 minutes telling the children that Daddy loves Star Trek more than them. And you know how awful Daddy is when he's mad. Then, conditioned to fear me, they were ready to come home. I didn't think that Stacy had it in her to do something like that, but I was wrong. This was only the beginning of my underestimating my rational and intelligent wife. Continuing to sleep with my wife was frustrating for me. Stacy could see this, and after a while said, "You're easily satisfied. I know what you want, and you're not going to get it. You need a girlfriend." Despite everything, Stacy was still as attractive to me as ever, and I still loved her, and I still had hope. You have to understand that with it all, there were tender moments between me and my children and Stacy and the children. And you read this story quickly, but you have to realize the tremendous amount of time and the mixture of feelings I confronted while these outrages were tolerated. After 4 years of Stacy reading personal ads from the newspaper to me, after 4 years of, "I don't love you, I don't want you, and I want you out. What do you want from me? You're easily satisfied. I know what you want. You're not going to get it. And You need a girlfriend. I got one. The woman and I had a bizarre affair that was escalating from an occasional fling into a relationship. I couldn't do it. I told her that we needed to scale back our time together. She wanted more, not less, so she had a few drinks and decided to call Stacy. Stacy was always home, but at this particular time, she was off giving blood. She still had that medical penchant. My daughter Siobhan answered the phone. The woman asked to speak to Stacy, and my 10-year-old daughter asked, "Who's calling?" The crazy bitch said, "It's your daddy's girlfriend." The woman had 2 master's degrees in child education, was an elementary school teacher, and was receiving psychotherapy. There was no excuse. She assaulted my innocent daughter. The woman rushed to me to confess what she had done. The assault was more than I could handle. I went straight home, and my wife was waiting. She asked me if it was my girlfriend who called the house, and I confessed that it was. She said, "Good! I knew if I gave you enough rope you would hang yourself. There's no fool like an old fool. Now I have something I can hold over your head forever. You are undeniably a bad person. You've admitted it. Now go live with your girlfriend." Well, after what she had done, that was impossible. Instead, I moved in with a guy whose own life made mine look like a walk in the park. He taught me how easy it would be to disappear off the face of the earth if I wanted to. Well, I didn't want to. But then, incredibly, my wife called me and said that we had to talk. She said that she needed me to come home, and we would try to start over. Once again, the range of emotions here is indescribable. Tragedy, loss, fear, distrust, desperation, frustration, futility, confusion, but now, hope. I was thrilled. I came running home. My wife was a changed woman. She knew that I was sorry and said that we were back where we belonged, and that she felt that she had dodged a bullet. I can't speak for her, but it didn't take too much empathy to imagine that she was dealing with her own range of emotions. Stacy had become the wife I always dreamed of. The wife that she said she could be, but wouldn't. I was in heaven. And I went to work with wings on my feet. Love had conquered all, and I would be forever grateful and never look back. That last sentence was the silliest one I've ever written. Shame on me, but please laugh with me, not at me. After a month and a half, I turned to Stacy in bed, and she said, "Not tonight," for the first time since our reunion, and that she needed to just go to sleep. This was normal for anybody, so no problem. The next night, my wife explained to me that she was having a lot of conflicting feelings and needed to sort them out. After a week of sleeping with an invisible wall between us in bed, the frustration of keeping my hands to myself became so great that I demanded to know where we stood. She confessed to me that my heaven was her hell, and that she could not keep up the charade any longer. "Now, go to sleep." Can you imagine? She said, "Go to sleep." I told her that neither one of us would ever sleep again unless I moved to the sofa, a pull-out with a steel bar right across the middle of your back. She could sleep without my advances, and I could sleep untempted. But I made it clear to her that it was my greatest hope that she would one night call me back upstairs. For over 2 years, she never did. Not many people see themselves as others see them. Your true nature is often hidden from them and you. I like to think of myself as a polite, reasonable, logical gentleman. Many people have characterized me as an abrupt, impatient, unsympathetic maniac. I've been described by some as the kindest, most understanding, and warmest man they ever met. My favorite line on a customer evaluation survey was, "If Fred were a hotel, he'd be 5-star." Others have said, "This guy is the nastiest bastard I have ever met." I now have 5 years of customer satisfaction surveys that reflect people's opinions of me, and they are all true. Ladies and gentlemen who visited me for customer service were given 5-star treatment. MRFers who came in to steal or abuse the business were met with the rough treatment they deserved. I have always given as much patience as I can to everyone, and if no glimmer of cooperation is forthcoming, I return what I have been given. One of my favorite quotes is, "We give what we get." I was not getting any cooperation in my attempts to communicate with Stacy for many years. I was still not yet hardened, and in fact, never did give her the treatment that she was asking for. About 5 years before my divorce, I approached Stacy with the idea of couples relationship counseling. I felt that an objective third party might bring the sorely needed communication. At that time, I had no idea about the misandry that permeated such services. Fortunately, I didn't get first-hand experience with the debacle at that time. Stacy's response was to say that counseling might be good for me, but would make no sense for her to be involved since all of our problems stem from my character flaws and mean-spirited nature. She suggested that if I really wanted to try a remedial experiment, maybe I should fight my horrible nature with mood-controlling drugs, maybe Valium. There were times when anxiety was tough on me. The idea was not without merit, and I was desperate to do anything that might improve my relationship with my wife. I went to the neurologist who had helped me with my migraine problem. He said that the idea was stupid, but I told him that Stacy was not stupid, and many of her insights were on the money. He said that Stacy was wrong, and I was desperate, and that was not the basis of a good decision. He referred me to a psychiatrist for an impartial perspective. I had the pleasure of taking my son and his 3 buddies to Cape May for a rare 4-day weekend, and after having a blast with them, I went to see the shrink. He listened to me but controlled the conversation with very pointed questions. This was not an analysis, it was to be a one-time visit. After a while, he stopped me and said, "Fred, you will always have anxiety because you care. I will not allow you to hurt yourself with drugs that will make you dull and careless. If you take them, your brilliance will be gone. You will be replaced by the kind of person that you hold in contempt, the dim but mellow dolts that plague your life all day, every day. You are in a physically abusive, toxic work environment that people who can't begin to understand with people who can't begin to understand who you are. Your work that dominates your time is unsatisfying to you. Your home life is absurd. You are in love with a person who does not understand you and is suffering from social and emotional problems of her own, which she denies. You may never do anything of note in your life, but at least you have the capacity to. Perhaps if you want to and your circumstances change. I will not help you to water your own wine," that's where I got that quote, "with drugs. They will not help you and will certainly not address the problems handed to you by your wife. Do what you will, but if I were you, I would change my circumstances at any cost. Goodbye, good luck." To me, at any cost would mean that my children would have to pay a terrible part of the cost, which was unacceptable to me. Little did I know that 5 years later, Stacy would orchestrate a scenario where at any cost would be my only option. 5 years later, I left New Jersey and lost everything. Several months after arriving in California, I got a rare phone call from Stacy who said that the children were paying the cost of her forcing me to leave. I told her that I was well aware of that, but couldn't do anything about it on my end. I told her that if she wanted help from me, I would be thrilled to come back to New Jersey. All she had to do was contact the court and request some kind of reconsideration of the ruling that was the cause of this truly absurd mess that had been fabricated. She laughed and asked, "Is that what you think? I called to let you off the hook? I just need more money. Oh, why did I bother? Fuck you, you fucking deadbeat." She hung up the phone. I guess she forgot about the kids. Earlier in the chapter, I stated that I did not know Stacy, and that her assertion of this was true. It sounds terrible to not know your wife, but it really is impossible to know something with which you have no experience and which seems out of the realm of possibility. In the prison of my current house arrest, I have reflected on the truth of not knowing her for 15 years. I've read many books about relationships and have come to realize that I did know her, but just couldn't admit what she was, because I would have to admit I was so wrong to stay with her for so long. From my study, I've come to the conclusion that there are basically 4 ways to express or to receive love. There are touchers. These people express their love with physical contact and wish to be loved back in the same way. They touch because they love and expect to be touched when loved. No touch, no love. There are speakers. These people express their love with the spoken word and wish to be loved back in the same way. My wife understood this well. Her disapproval was a serious weapon because as much as a spoken word person loves approval, disapproval can be more hurtful than physical violence. There are the gesturers. These people express their love through gestures, whether a physical gift or an act such as repairing the house. Big or small, it doesn't matter. It's the thought that counts. I found that I got the same reaction from my wife if I gave her a car or a little fuzzy bear clip to clip on the mirror of her regular car. After making gestures and receiving none in return, you realize that your gestures are meaningless. The 4th is time together. These people don't care if they're rich or poor. They just want to be together. That they choose to be in the same room together as much as they can is all they need. I've seen couples who come home from work and watch TV until they fall asleep every night. When I say I tried everything with Stacy, I tried each one of these things in various degrees and combinations. I knew the truth about her but couldn't admit it. I always said she didn't love me because she didn't respond to any of my expressions of love. I said she didn't love me because she didn't express love sincerely in any one of those ways. Remember, she used to say, "I know what you want. You're not going to get it." She did understand the 4 kinds of normal expressions of love, but she was unique in my understanding of human beings. There was no way at that time that I could ever have come to terms with what I knew about her. In my relationship with her, the 4 forms of love were used by her as 4 forms of torture. The truth was, she needed me to die. You see, Stacy is the ultimate fatalist. Her philosophy is, as long as you live, you can screw up. So for her to be fully satisfied with me, I had to meet my obligations until I died. My death would mean that at last I could not screw up. I would be perfect. Only then could she look back at me, fully commit, and love me. If you feel this impossible to deal with, you are where I was. That's the end of the chapter. Thanks for going back in time with me for a little fill-in on the way I lived and what I went through for all those years. I appreciate you staying with me on this. I'll be back with chapter soon. I'll be back soon with chapter 13. I'm going to talk about friends. Thanks again.